The warehouse was buzzing with a mixture of low voices, the shuffle of boots on concrete, and the occasional sharp bark of dogs trapped in cages. Rusted metal crates lined the walls, some battered, others looking almost new, housing everything. From tiny puppies yipping nervously to large muscular breeds trained for work or protection. The air smelled faintly of damp wood, dog hair, and the bitter tang of adrenaline. In the middle of this rough and rowdy crowd, a solitary figure moved quietly. Emily Taylor stepped through the door, her shoes scuffing softly against the cold floor. She was just 16, but her posture carried a weight that made her seem older, a mixture of grief and resolve pressed into every step she took. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk hunting for a target. The murmurs began almost immediately. "Isn't that Officer Taylor's daughter?" someone whispered. "What's she doing here? Alone?" another voice asked. But Emily ignored them all. She had learned early how to walk through a crowd without being seen, even when everyone was looking. She clutched a small, worn envelope tightly in one hand, the edges bent and creased from countless folds. The other hand was wrapped loosely around the strap of her faded backpack, which held her few belongings. She wasn't here to buy a flashy show dog or a prize-winning puppy. She had come for one dog, and one dog only. Her eyes locked onto a cage tucked in the far corner of the room. Inside was an old German shepherd, his fur patchy and graying, his ribs showing beneath a thin coat. His eyes, deep and tired, flicked up to meet hers for a brief moment before he turned away. He trembled, not just from age or cold, but from something deeper, fear, loss and abandonment. Emily's breath caught. She remembered the stories her father told her about Rex, his canine partner who had saved countless lives during his years on the force. They were inseparable, a perfect team. But Rex had disappeared the night her father was shot in the line of duty, a mystery that had haunted Emily ever since. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the room, jolting Emily from her thoughts. Next up, a fine German shepherd, strong and loyal, perfect for protection or companionship. Starting bid $500. The bidding began, but Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding. If Rex was here, if this was really her father's dog, she couldn't let him slip away. People around her called out bids, some eager to claim a prize, others simply looking to make a quick profit. The German shepherd's cage rattled as the dog shifted nervously. Emily's fingers tightened on the envelope. She took a step forward, but the crowd seemed to close in around her, a sea of strangers who didn't know her pain, didn't know what Rex meant to her. Yet something inside her ignited, a fierce determination that had been growing since her father's death. As the bidding rose, so did the tension in the room. Emily's eyes didn't leave the dog. This wasn't just about a lost pet. This was about a promise her father had made, one she intended to keep. Her voice barely a whisper, she called out, "Please, don't sell him." The words hung in the air, fragile but clear. All eyes turned to her, the silent girl, in the auction crowd, clutching a letter that could change everything. Emily's voice barely reached the crowd, but it was enough to still the room for a moment. The auctioneer's gavel hovered in mid-air as dozens of eyes fixed on the trembling girl by the battered cage. She knelt slowly, lowering herself to the dog's level despite the murmurs around her. The old German shepherd flinched again, but something in Emily's calm gaze seemed to reach through his fear. "Rex," she whispered, the name tasting like a prayer on her lips. The dog lifted his head slowly, ears twitching as if trying to remember something long forgotten. His dark eyes, clouded with age and pain, met hers. For a heartbeat, the noise and the strangers faded away. It was just the girl and the dog, lost souls seeking each other in a world that had been cruel. Tears pricked Emily's eyes. She brushed a trembling hand along the dog's dusty coat. "I'm here, Rex. It's me, Emily." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop speaking. The memories flooded back, clearer and sharper than ever. She saw her father, Mark Taylor, standing tall in his uniform, his face breaking into a rare smile as he knelt beside Rex. "Good boy, Rex. You saved my life today." She remembered the endless hours at the police academy, the training runs, the way Rex had nuzzled her hand whenever she came home. Those were happier times, before the shooting, before the silence. But that night, the night her father died, everything changed. Rex vanished without a trace. The police filed reports, made inquiries, but no one could say where the dog had gone. Emily never stopped hoping. She had spent every day searching, asking shelters, calling handlers. Now here she was. Her heart clenched tighter as she noticed the scars on Rex's legs, the way his once proud frame had thinned to nearly nothing. It was clear he hadn't been cared for, treated more like an object than a living being. The thought filled her with a bitter anger. The auctioneer cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Ladies and gentlemen, the bidding will continue. Who will offer for this fine dog?" His voice was brisk, but a flicker of hesitation betrayed him. Emily's hands shook as she clutched the envelope tighter. Inside was a letter, her father's last words written for her, a message that held the key to everything. But before she could pull it out, the crowd's attention snapped back to the auction. A tall man in the back shouted, $500? Another voice bid $700, then $1,000. The bids climbed fast. Emily's chest tightened. She couldn't outbid them all, but she had something else, something no one else knew about. Her father's letter. The memory of her father's voice echoed in her mind. "If anything happens to me, Emily, promise me you'll look after Rex. That dog saved my life more times than I can count. He's more than a partner. He's family." Her fingers trembled as she finally opened the envelope, pulling out the worn, folded paper. The room seemed to hold its breath as she stepped onto the auction platform, her voice breaking but determined. "This letter is from my father," she said, scanning the faces before her. "He was a police officer, and Rex was his partner. Before my dad died, he wrote this will saying Rex should never be sold or abandoned." She unfolded the letter, reading the words aloud, words filled with love, loyalty, and a plea to protect Rex's future. The crowd was silent, some looking moved, others skeptical. The auctioneer paused, unsure whether to continue or listen, but not everyone was convinced. A man with a gruff voice shouted, "This is an auction. You can't just claim a dog with a letter. Where's your proof?" Emily swallowed hard. "This collar," she said, pulling out a dog tag attached to a worn leather collar from her backpack. "It has his name and badge number. Rex was my dad's partner. He didn't deserve this." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Emily could feel their eyes, some softening, some still doubtful, but she refused to back down. She had come too far, lost too much. The old German shepherd took a tentative step forward, nose twitching as if sensing her words were true. For the first time in a long time, Emily dared to hope. The auction hall's noise dimmed to a tense silence as Emily's small voice carried across the room. She stood trembling but resolute on the platform, clutching the yellowed letter in her hand. The flickering overhead lights cast shadows that danced on the faces around her, some curious, some skeptical, others quietly moved. The auctioneer shifted uneasily behind his podium. "Well, young lady," he said carefully, "an auction's an auction, the highest bidder usually wins. What makes this letter so special that it should stop the whole sale?" Emily took a deep breath and read aloud, her voice gaining strength. With every word, "If anything happens to me, I want my partner Rex to be protected. He's more than a dog. He's my partner, my friend, and my family. He saved my life more times than I can count, and I ask whoever finds this letter to honor that bond. Rex should never be sold or mistreated. He deserves a home that remembers his service." The room held its breath. The letter was handwritten, not just any paper, but something personal, filled with a father's love and a promise that demanded respect. Suddenly, a gruff voice cut through the silence. "This ain't a courtroom," barked a man near the back. "This is an auction house. You're just a kid trying to play hero with some old dog and a scrap of paper." A few voices chimed in agreement, some scoffing. Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the letter tighter. She knew her father had no formal legal will. His last message was informal, but heartfelt. Could that be enough? She wasn't sure. But the alternative, losing Rex, was unthinkable. Another bidder stepped forward, crossing his arms. "Show us proof this dog even belongs to your father. What's to stop you from making this up? This is business, not a fairy tale." Emily's eyes burned with frustration, but she forced herself to stay calm. "This collar," she said, pulling it from her backpack. The leather was cracked and faded, the brass tag worn, but still legible. Rex, badge B421, partner of officer. "Monsieur Taylor." A murmur spread through the crowd. Some faces softened, others frowned. The auctioneer leaned in to examine the collar, his brow furrowing. "That's some serious evidence," he admitted quietly. An older man near the front, wearing a faded police jacket, cleared his throat. "I remember Officer Taylor. Good man. He loved that dog like a brother. If that's Rex, then this girl's telling the truth." Emily's heart pounded as hope flickered to life inside her. The crowd was shifting. But then, a sharper voice spoke again. "Proof or not, the law's the law," the auctioneer said firmly. "Legally, she can't just claim the dog without a court order." Emily's gaze never left Rex, who had started to settle quietly in his cage, his eyes following her every movement. She took a deep breath and said, "Maybe not legally, but what about morally? My dad's letter. It's his last wish. Rex saved his life. Rex's family." A hush fell over the room. People began exchanging looks, some skeptical, some moved. It was no longer just an auction. It was a question of honor and respect. Suddenly, the old man with the police jacket stepped forward. "I'm retired now, but I served with Mark Taylor for years. He wouldn't just leave his partner behind. Something's wrong here. That dog shouldn't be up for auction." Emily looked at him, grateful for the unexpected support. "I've been trying to find Rex since my father died. No one could tell me where he went. Tonight, I realized he was sold. Maybe by someone who wanted to make money from him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few people exchanged uneasy glances. The story wasn't just about a lost dog anymore. It was about betrayal. Emily's voice cracked as she continued. "Please, I'm asking you all. Help me save Rex." For the first time in the night, a warm wave of silence swept the hall. Eyes that had been doubtful now looked at her with empathy. The auctioneer tapped his gavel slowly. "All right, everyone, let's take a moment." Room settled, waiting, listening. Emily knelt once more by the cage. Rex lifted his head, sensing something had changed. He gave a weak wag of his tail. This was more than an auction now. It was the beginning of a fight to honor a promise, a daughter's fight to save her father's legacy. The auctioneer's gavel remained motionless as the room buzzed with a tense energy. Some faces softened, touched by Emily's story, but others hardened with skepticism. The scent of uncertainty mingled with the damp air, as if the warehouse itself held its breath. From the back of the room, a large man stepped forward. His face was weathered, marked with years of dealing in dogs and deals. "I don't buy it," he growled. "You're just a kid. This letter means nothing here. This is a business, not a charity. If you want the dog, you have to pay." Several voices behind him murmured agreement, some even jeering. "Let the auction go on," one said. "No free rides." Emily's heart pounded. She felt the weight of their eyes, dismissive, hard. Her voice wavered but didn't break. "It's not about charity or business. It's about respect. My father's dog deserves better than this," the large man sneered. "Respect doesn't pay the bills. This dog's worth a lot of money, and I'm not giving him away just because you say so." A wave of anger rose in Emily, but she forced herself to stay calm. From her backpack she pulled out something else, a worn leather collar, frayed at the edges but unmistakable. Attached was a tarnished brass tag, engraved with Rex and a badge number. "This collar was found in my father's belongings after he died," Emily said, holding it high. "It's proof that Rex was my father's partner. He didn't deserve to be sold to the highest bidder." The room shifted again. Some people exchanged uneasy glances. The large man snorted. "That collar's old, could belong to anyone." Emily's voice grew firmer. "It belongs to Rex, the dog who disappeared the night my father was shot." At that moment, a voice interrupted from the side. A man with a grey beard and a faded police jacket stepped forward. "I'm Officer Daniels, retired. I served with Mark Taylor for over 15 years. That dog was Mark's partner. I remember it well." The crowd quieted as Daniels spoke with quiet authority. "Mark loved that dog like family. When Mark was shot, Rex went missing. We tried to find him, but no one could say where he went. If this is Rex, he deserves to come home." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She glanced down at the dog, who now looked at her with faint recognition. Rex lifted his head slowly and gave a soft whimper. Suddenly, the large man's face twisted with anger. "That's nonsense. This is an auction. If you want him, you pay. No exceptions." Several others nodded, preparing for the bidding to resume. The tension thickened, the room almost crackling with energy. Emily swallowed hard, fighting to steady her voice. "My father's last wish was for someone to protect Rex. That letter says it all. I'm not asking for a free dog. I'm asking for justice." The auctioneer raised his hand. "Enough. We'll hold a moment to consider this. No bids for now." People muttered but fell silent, waiting for what would come next. Emily knelt beside Rex's cage. He was weak, his body trembling. But as she gently reached through the bars, he nuzzled her hand. The connection was undeniable. This dog belonged with her, but doubt still lingered in the eyes of many. Some wondered if Emily was just a grieving girl chasing a memory. Others feared the auction's reputation might be challenged. In the corner, a young woman whispered to a friend, "What if she's right? What if there's more to this?" Across the room, a man pulled out his phone, quietly, snapping pictures. The story was spreading faster than anyone realized. Emily looked around the crowd. Some faces were stern, some curious, and a few showed sympathy. She wasn't alone anymore. Her father's promise, the dog's loyalty, and her own determination had sparked something in that room. A storm of doubt, yes, but also the possibility of truth. And Emily wasn't ready to give up. The warehouse was charged with quiet tension as the auctioneer signaled a brief recess. People shifted uneasily, whispering in clusters, their eyes flicking between Emily and the aging German shepherd. For the first time that evening, the raw edges of the story began to unravel beneath the surface. Emily stayed close to Rex's cage, her fingers lightly tracing the worn leather collar. Her heart was a storm of hope and fear. If this dog was really Rex, then the puzzle pieces her father left behind might finally fall into place. Officer Daniels approached her, lowering his voice. "Emily, I think it's time we dig deeper into what happened that night." She nodded, grateful for his support. "I've asked around, but no one talks. It's like Rex just vanished." Daniels frowned. "Sometimes there are things the department wants to keep quiet, especially when an officer dies in the line of duty." Emily's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying?" "Maybe someone didn't want Rex found," Daniels said carefully. "Maybe there's more to your father's shooting than what we know." Emily swallowed hard. The idea that her father's death and Rex's disappearance could have been covered up sent chills down her spine. She thought of the small envelope she still held, the letter, her only link to the truth. The crowd slowly reassembled as the auction was about to resume. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "All right, folks, we're back in business." Bidding restarted, but the energy had shifted. No longer just a typical sale, this was now a story of loyalty, loss, and justice. Bids trickled in cautiously, the price inching upward, but the passion was palpable. Emily stepped forward, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "I want to bid, not to compete, but to buy Rex and give him the home he deserves." A murmur spread. "She can't afford this," someone said. "Let her try," another replied. Emily's cheeks flushed, but she kept her gaze locked on Rex. "I'm prepared to pay what I can." The bids climbed fast, driven by curiosity and sympathy alike. But before the hammer could fall, a sharp voice cut through the room. "I'm Detective Harris," said a man stepping into the light, his badge gleaming despite the dimness. "I've been reviewing Mark Taylor's case." Heads turned, whispers rising. Detective Harris walked directly to Emily. "There's something I found, evidence that wasn't disclosed before. A witness who saw suspicious men near the scene that night." Emily's breath caught. "What kind of suspicious men?" Harris glanced around before answering quietly. "Men involved in illegal dog trafficking. Rex may have been taken because he witnessed something they wanted to hide." A stunned silence fell. The connection was staggering. Rex's disappearance wasn't random, it was part of something darker. Emily felt a surge of fierce determination. "Then I have to find out who's responsible for my father, for Rex. The crowd's atmosphere transformed again, from skepticism to urgent empathy. This wasn't just about a dog or a lost daughter anymore. It was about uncovering a hidden truth that had long been buried. The auctioneer hesitated, but then banged his gavel decisively. "Last call for Rex." Emily raised her hand. "I bid everything I have." There were no further bids. The gavel fell. Sold. To the young lady. Relief flooded Emily. She knelt by Rex's cage as the handlers opened. The old dog, stepped out slowly, his legs shaky but his spirit flickering with a spark she hadn't seen in years. She wrapped her arms around Rex, whispering, "We're going home." But deep inside, Emily knew this was just the beginning. There were secrets to uncover, promises to keep, and justice to seek. For her father, for Rex, and for the truth that refused to stay buried. The auction hall slowly emptied, but Emily stayed close to Rex. The dog leaned into her touch, as if finding strength in her presence. The bond between them, though weathered by time and hardship, was unmistakable, a lifeline connecting the past to the uncertain future. Outside, the night was thick and silent. Emily wrapped Rex in a worn blanket she'd brought, careful to shelter him from the chill. She carried him to her car, feeling the weight of both the dog and the moment settle on her shoulders. Officer Daniels caught up to her as she was about to drive off. "Emily," he said softly, "we need to talk. There's more you need to know." Emily's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm listening." Daniels lowered his voice, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "Your father's shooting wasn't random. I believe it was connected to a ring dealing in stolen police dogs." Emily's eyes widened. "But why? What could Rex possibly have to do with that?" Rex was trained for special operations. He knew things, places, people, cases, that made him valuable. That night, your father was onto something big. Someone wanted to silence him. Emily's mind raced. Pieces she hadn't understood before began to fit together. The silence from the department, the missing reports, the strange looks she'd gotten when asking questions. Suddenly, a sharp sound cracked through the quiet night. A vehicle screeched nearby. Emily jumped, her heart pounding. Daniels glanced toward the street, his expression darkening. "You need to be careful. If these people think Rex is back, they'll come after you." Emily swallowed hard but nodded. "I won't run. Not now." Inside her car, Rex lay quietly, his breathing shallow but steady. Emily stroked his head, feeling a fierce protectiveness rise inside her. She had to keep him safe, no matter what. Over the next days, Emily and Daniel started piecing together the threads of the dark network that had ensnared her father and Rex. They met with old contacts, followed leads, and uncovered hidden files buried deep in police archives. Every discovery brought them closer to a truth some wanted buried forever. One evening, Emily sat at her kitchen table, the letter from her father spread before her. Her eyes scanned the familiar handwriting, drawing strength from his words. "Protect Rex," it urged. She whispered, "I will, Dad, I promise." Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door shattered the quiet. Emily's pulse quickened. She peered through the peephole. No one was there. A folded note slipped under the door, caught her eye. Hands trembling, she picked it up. In bold, chilling letters it read, "Stop digging or you'll lose more than a dog." Fear and determination warred inside her. Whoever had sent this warning wanted her to back down, but that wasn't an option. Not when so much was at stake. Daniels arrived moments later, concern etched deep into his face when she showed him the note. "They're watching," he said grimly. "But we can't stop now. We owe it to Mark, to Rex, and to the truth." Emily nodded, steeling herself. She glanced down at Rex, now resting quietly on the floor, and whispered, "We'll get through this together." The quiet resolve in her voice belied the storm gathering just beyond the horizon. The fight for justice had only just begun, and the shadows were closing in. But Emily wasn't afraid. She had Rex, and a promise that nothing would break. The days that followed felt like walking a tightrope. Emily's world narrowed to a fragile balance between hope and danger. Every phone call, every shadow in the street seemed to carry the weight of unseen threats. Yet, beneath it all, her determination burned brighter than ever. With Officer Daniels's help, Emily traced the source of the warning note to a burner phone that led to a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place was a hub for shady deals, stolen goods, illegal dogs, and whispered secrets that would shatter reputations. Emily and Daniels waited under the cloak of night, watching as rough-looking men loaded cages into trucks. Among them they spotted a familiar face, a former officer who'd been dismissed under mysterious circumstances years ago. His cold eyes locked onto Emily's from across the lot. "This is it," Daniels whispered. "We're closer than ever." Emily's heart pounded. The man was tied to her father's case in ways she hadn't expected, a man who knew more than he'd ever admitted, and who now stood between her and the truth. They decided to move quickly, gathering evidence and recording conversations whenever possible. Each revelation peeled back layers of deception, a trafficking ring exploiting retired police dogs, silencing officers who got too close. One evening, after a long day of investigation, Emily returned home exhausted. Rex lay quietly on his bed, and for a moment peace seemed possible, but that peace shattered when she found her apartment door ajar. Inside, drawers were pulled out, papers scattered, a clear message. Someone had been searching for something. Emily's hands shook as she picked up a torn piece of paper, the letter from her father, ripped and discarded. Tears blurred her vision. They were closer than she'd thought. The danger was real. Determined not to be driven away, Emily called Daniels. "They're here," she said softly. "They want to scare me." Daniels' voice was steady. "We need to get you somewhere. Safe. This isn't just about a dog anymore, it's about exposing corruption." Together, they arranged for Emily to stay with a trusted friend, someone outside the tangled web of deception. Days passed in a haze of fear and strategy. Emily's resolve hardened. She wouldn't stop until Rex was safe and her father's name cleared. One afternoon, Daniels called with news. "We've got a lead on a man who's been moving dogs through the ring. If we catch him, we can break the chain." Emily felt a spark of hope. "Let's do it." They planned a sting operation, coordinating with a few honest officers still loyal to Mark's memory. The night of the operation was tense. Emily's hands clenched into fists as she watched the men arrive to pick up the dogs, including a cage with a younger dog she recognized from the ring. Suddenly, an explosion of movement and noise. Officers burst in, shouting commands. In the pure chaos, the man with cold eyes tried to slip away. But Daniels was faster, tackling him to the ground. As the man was handcuffed, Emily stepped forward, locking eyes with him. "Why?" she demanded. "Why betray your own?" The man sneered, refusing to answer. But Daniels spoke. "You'll have your chance in court. For now, justice begins here." Emily felt the weight of the moment, a victory, but only the first. Step in a long road. Back at the safe house, she sat with Rex, the old dog resting his head on her lap. The fight had taken its toll on both of them, but neither would give up. For Mark Taylor, for Rex, for truth. Emily's journey was far from over. The courtroom was packed, a silent crowd bearing witness to a story that had captured the city's heart. Emily sat quietly, Rex resting calmly by her side, both of them symbols of a struggle that transcended grief and fear. The trial had become more than a legal battle. It was a reckoning, a chance to expose corruption, honor a fallen officer, and protect the dogs that had been used and abused in the shadows. As the prosecution laid out their case, a picture emerged of a dark network. Former officers gone. Rogue, trafficking dogs trained for police work, silencing anyone who threatened their operation. Evidence, recordings, and testimonies piled up, painting a clear picture of betrayal. Emily listened with a mix of anger and relief. At last, the truth was shining through. When it was her turn to speak, she stood, voice steady but filled with emotion. "My father believed in justice. He believed in loyalty, not just between officers, but with his dog, Rex. They were partners in every sense. Losing him was the hardest thing I've ever faced. But today, I stand here to say that no one's sacrifice will be forgotten." The courtroom held its breath as she looked at Rex, who lifted his head, eyes bright with quiet dignity. The judge nodded solemnly. This court recognizes the sacrifices made and condemns those who betrayed their duty. Justice will be served. Weeks later, the verdict came: guilty on all counts. The ringleaders were sentenced, and the trafficking operation dismantled. Emily felt a heavy weight lift. It wasn't just a personal victory, it was a message that truth, loyalty, and courage could overcome even the darkest deception. Outside, the courthouse reporters swarmed. Emily answered questions with grace, always returning to the heart of the story: her father Rex and the promise she kept. In the days that followed, life settled into a new rhythm. Rex's health improved steadily, and Emily found comfort in their quiet routines, long walks in the park, evenings spent with old photos and memories. One afternoon, Emily visited her father's grave. She knelt, placing the worn collar gently on the stone. "Dad," she whispered, "we did it. Rex is home, and your story is finally told." A soft breeze stirred, as if carrying a silent approval. Emily stood, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The journey had been long, painful, and filled with shadows, but it had also been full of love, courage, and hope. With Rex by her side, she looked forward to the future, no longer just the fallen cop's daughter, but a woman who fought for justice, loyalty, and the truth, and who had found her own strength along the way.